أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين المعصومين اللهم وبركاته. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your a'mal, to accept your salat in these holy days, and to make us from those who truly benefit from Shahr Ramadan and truly take the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in front of us, and truly make us from those who progress from the days coming ahead. Bi'awnillah ta'ala. Some of you may know this humble servant, and some of you may not. My name is Ahmed Bazzi. I am nothing but a servant for you, inshallah, for the next upcoming days. I always say the person who's in front of the microphone or in front of the camera, in this case, obviously, is but a servant for the people and is not at all seen as someone above the people. Rather, a servant is to do what the master says, and you are, inshallah, you are the one that orders me, and I am the one to fulfill bi'awnillah ta'ala. Inshallah, my brothers and sisters, I will be with you for the next 8 days, and then inshallah onwards after that. And when I was sitting down and I was asking myself, what do I want to speak to the brothers and sisters about? Let me just fix this camera here. What do I want to talk about in the next 8 days? I have 8 days to cover one topic. I have 8 days to cover a multitude of different topics. You know, what am I going to cover? What am I going to discuss? I was put in, I had a choice. Either I take the series approach where I pick one general topic and do a whole series about that topic, or I do something a little different where I'll be speaking about multiple different topics, but under one tone, using one scope, trying to use one outlook, trying to be in and around one general topic. Personally speaking, brothers and sisters, I don't necessarily like to do series just because I feel that a series of lectures on one specific topic is more suitable for an academic setting or a more academic crowd. But I feel like these lectures are more going to be family oriented. So what I want to do is the second option, inshallah ta'ala, for the next 8 days. I want to speak about practical, theoretical, and also philosophical topics. But all of these topics are surrounded by one general circle or encompassed in one general tone. That general tone, my brothers and sisters, is holistic Islam. Holistic Islam. What do I mean by holistic Islam? Well, take it like this. A lot of the times, my brothers and sisters, when it comes to our understanding of Islam, and when it comes to what we choose to learn about, when it comes to the lectures that we want to delve into and discuss and learn and listen to gain something from, a lot of the times we gravitate towards lectures or discussions or topics that speak of issues pertaining to Islam that are secondary, even tertiary issues, the minor nitty-gritty details of Islam, some historical event that occurred that is not necessarily one of the main pillars of Islamic history, or some aqa'id mas'ala that is so tertiary, that has no practicality or very, very little practicality in our real world, where you find that a lot of the mu'mineen nowadays have vast knowledge of things such as usul al-fiqh, or the history of al-usuliyin versus al-akhbariyin, for example, which is something that we discuss in 6th or 7th year of Hawza. They have a vast understanding of this. They have a vast understanding of the history of the ulama and the way our religion progressed through the ulama, for example, which is very important. But you come and ask somebody, why do you worship God? Well, that's a question I've never been asked before. As in, God exists. Okay, Ty, why do you worship him? Wow, that I've never been asked that before. Okay, sure. Put that one aside. Why do you search for the truth? What prompts you as a human being to search for the truth? Why search for it? What obligates you to search for it? On the day of judgment, that person that was living their life in oblivion, when they're put in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what proof does God have on that individual to say, why didn't you search for the truth? These questions, my brothers and sisters, that we don't ask ourselves, or a lot of the times others don't ask us from within our own circles, sometimes those are the most important questions. Because here in the West, nobody's asking us about the children of Muslim ibn Aqil, rahmatullah alayh, ridwanullah alayh, alayhi salam. Or for example, Sab' al-Dijjal. Nobody's asking about these figures here in the West. In the West, they're asking, Tayyib, why are you a Muslim? And if you are a Muslim, why do you practice? Tayyib, you believe. Isn't that enough? If God created you to worship him, isn't belief enough? And they can get you many hadith that point to this idea. Point to the idea that if you want to give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give God back, or pay him back, repay God, thank him to the fullest, know him. Well, there you go. You have a hadith, you have narrations that come forward and tell you this. Like, these are the fundamentals of Islam. And sometimes we have a hard time understanding them. Why? Because our outlook towards Islam is not holistic. It's segmented, it's fragmented. It's fragmented, my brothers and sisters. So today in this lecture, I want to discuss the importance of holistic Islam, and right beside it, coupled with it, is practical Islam. Because when you talk about holistic Islam, always right beside it, like a puzzle piece, fits practical Islam. Because Islam itself, my brothers and sisters, is not just merely a religion, in terms of beliefs. No. It is beliefs that bring about an action. It is beliefs that bring about a code of conduct. Whenever your beliefs don't bring about a code of conduct, that's when you have to question. Am I looking at Islam just in the nitty-gritty details, in a segmented outlook, with a segmented scope, through a segmented lens? Or am I looking at Islam in its whole identity and its entire message and what it is holistically? And you find, my brothers and sisters, this, I don't want to call it disease, but this, I want to say diluted or misconceived image of Islam, this blurred out image of Islam, the segmented image of Islam, the fragmented image of Islam, is one that you find in our communities a lot, especially those communities that have sort of been in one city for a long time, or those communities that have been established communities. You find fragmented Islam is widespread. It's widespread. It's a pandemic. That itself is a pandemic. Fragmented Islam. Why? Well, because a lot of the times, people are only religious because of tradition. As in, religious identity to a lot of people is merely traditional, where people are Muslim or Shia or believe in this and don't believe in that because their forefathers taught them 1, 2, 3, and 4, so they go by what their fathers taught them. And so you find, because Islam and culture and tradition are so interlocked in the minds of many people in the community, they tend not to understand Islam as a whole. Rather, they understand Islam through the scope of tradition and culture, which gives them a very, very fragmented and distorted image of Islam, where it's like you're taking a telescope and zooming into the Mona Lisa, only looking at the eye of Mona Lisa. To you, Mona Lisa is just an eye. And you want to sit and you analyze the eye, and the eye means this, and this is the true meaning of the eye, and this is the Mona Lisa, and you can write an entire report about the eye of the Mona Lisa. But it means nothing when you zoom out and you see that eye belonged to a woman, and that woman is looking straight at you, right? A lot of the times, fragmented Islam distorts Islam for us. And I believe, I believe that this distortion of Islam, fragmented Islam, is one of the major reasons why in our community, the same person that's coming to the mosque and praying every day, praying Salat al-Jum'ah, for example, in the majalis, that same exact person is found in the clubs. That same exact person that is praying in the majalis is found in the bar. That same person is partying. To us, it's a contradiction. But where is that contradiction stemming from? From distorted Islam, from fragmented Islam, taking Islam here, and then outside Islam has no place. That comes from looking at Islam through that limited scope and not holistically. when you have a holistic understanding of Islam, when you have the fundamentals ingrained and understand them fully and allow those fundamentals to bring about action, my brothers and sisters, that's when you get holistic Islam. And that's when Islam becomes molded with who you are. And that's when Islam works in the desert, just as it works on land, just as it works in the sea, just as it works, the tone for the lectures to come. Bi'awnillah ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa alayhi. First and foremost, you find that the ahadith spoke about this. The ahadith told us to indulge ourselves in what we call al-ilm an-nafi', knowledge that's beneficial. Not to say that the details of the sharia or religion is not beneficial. No, it's beneficial. But you find from this hadith from Rasulullah, he more or less directs you to what you should be exposing yourself and your families to, even in terms of the religion itself. Listen to the hadith. By the way, in the hadith, and you're going to see, I read them in Arabic and then translate them for the fadl, for the blessing of the riwayah. The Arabic language is extremely, extremely important. And Sayyid Sistani, by the way, this is in brackets. Sayyid Sistani, by the way, he gives advice. He says to us, expose the people to the Arabic language. Speak Arabic to them because it's the language of the Quran and ultimately it's the language of Salat. So I'm going to read it in Arabic, inshallah, and then translate. So look what the riwayah says. عن أبي الحسن موسى عليه السلام. Imam Musa al-Kadhim عليه السلام. His name was Abu al-Hasan. دخل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم المسجد فإذا جماعة قد أطافوا برجل. Rasulullah entered the masjid and he saw the people of the masjid, they're around a man. Have like a circle and they're around a man. فقال ما هذا? What is this? فقيل علام. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say man هذا. He didn't say who is this. He says what is this? What is it that I'm seeing? He knows who this person is. He knows what this person knows. He understands what this person is doing. So he didn't say wallahu alam. This could have been the reason why he didn't say man هذا. Who is this? He said ma هذا. What is this that I see in front of me? فقيل. They answered علامة. They said this person is what they call allama, not just alim, not just knowledgeable, a person with great deep knowledge. فقال وما العلامة. So the Prophet ﷺ said, and then what is the allama? What's the person with great deep knowledge? Who is that person? Describe him to me. So they said, فقالوا له أعلم الناس بأنساب العرب ووقائعها وأيام الجاهلية والأشعار العربية. They said, the person that knows most about the ancestry of the Arabs, about the events that happened in the history of the Arabs, and what? And the customs of Jahiliyyah and Arabic poetry. This is the Allama. This is the person with great knowledge. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, ذَاكَ عِلْمٌ لَا يَضُرُّ مَنْ جَهِلَ وَلَا يَنْفَعُ مَنْ عَلِمَ. That is knowledge that does not benefit someone who knows it, nor does it hurt the person who doesn't know it. ثم قال النبي. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إنما العلم ثلاثة. Knowledge is three. What are they, Ya Rasulullah? آية محكمة. A verse from the Quran that is clear in its meaning. أو فريضة عادلة. Learning your obligations. Practical. Your obligation. What's on your shoulders? What's the obligation that you must fulfill? Practical. أو سنة قائمة. Or a sunnah that you do. Sunnah is what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did in an imitation of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So for example, walking into a room with your right foot is what we call sunnah. It's what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did. Sunnah can also be taken as broader. The words of the Prophet, the actions of the Prophet is sunnah. A sunnah. Practical, my brothers and sisters. Look at the practical outlook. And then he finishes it all off and says, وَمَا خَلَاهُنَّ فَهُوَ فَضْلٌ. And what is other than these three is what we call fadl. Either fadl as an extra or something good to know. It's something good to have. It's an extra piece there. It's an extra piece. Like the car. You want to shine the paint of the car, it's extra. But you better have an engine in that car. Because if you don't have an engine in the car, shining the car means nothing. It has no meaning. Practical, my brothers and sisters. Practical. That's why you find the riwayat are littered with this indication that allow your outlook towards Islam to be holistic and practical. To be holistic and practical. Look at this riwayah from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And by the way, again, something else, just for the days to come. I like to give a lot of riwayat because my words are nothing. I'm a nobody. Take the words of Ali bin Abi Talib. Take the words of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. If you want to take anything from this lecture, take their words, not my words. My words mean nothing. Take their words. Look what Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam has to say. Look what he says. عن الأمير عليه السلام قال أيها الناس, O people, اعلموا أن كمال الدين طلب العلم. Know that the completion of religion, طلب العلم, seeking knowledge, and what? وَالْعَمَلْ بِهِ, and acting according to what you know. Like this riwayah is used as an indication that if you learn something, act on it. Don't be a hypocrite learning something and don't acting on it. Fine, yes, you can understand it that way. But also understand it from another way. What you learn, allow it to be practical. Allow what you expose yourself to be practical, my brothers and sisters. When you turn on your computer, you want to listen to a lecture, ask yourself, where is this taking me? What is this going to do for me? Yes, it's ajr. Yes, it's reward. It's reward that you're seeking knowledge. Sure, fine. What's it going to do for me? What's it going to do for me in the outside world? Where am I going to go with this? Where am I going to go with this? وَأَنَّ طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ, or وَإِنَّ طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ أَوْجَبْ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ طَلَبِ الْمَالِ. Seeking knowledge is more important in the eyes of God, has more weight in the eyes of God than seeking wealth and money. SubhanAllah. That's why our ulama, my brothers and sisters, when it comes to this issue of practical Islam, you know what they said to us? They said, there's a piece of Islam that is wajib to learn and to know, and then there's a piece of Islam that is not wajib to know. All depending on what is practical, and all depending on what raises the obligation from your shoulders. Listen, in our first year of Hawza, when we're discussing fiqh, one of the first masail that they teach you in Hawza is this one. It is obligatory on human being to know what the fatwa is, what the ruling is of a situation that they will encounter. Even if that situation does not present itself on a daily basis or even weekly basis, but there's a chance that this situation will present itself. They must know the ruling. It's wajib to know the ruling. For example, salat. That is something that you encounter on a daily basis. You must know ahkam of salat. Jameel. What about the secondary ahkam of salat? For example, if you dealt between the third and the fourth rak'ah, you're standing up, you don't know, am I in the third or the fourth rak'ah? It's wajib to know that as well. What do? And Sayyid Sistani, he even gives that example. وَجُمْلَ مِنْ أَحْكَامِ السَّهْوَ وَالشَّكِّ. He says, it's wajib for you. Why? Why? Because you're going to encounter that, my brothers and sisters. And it's wajib. As for business, as for mudaraba, for example, mudaraba, certain business transactions, for example. If you're not a businessman, you don't need to know those laws. But if you are, you must know those laws. Taking Islam practically, brothers and sisters, and as we said, it goes hand in hand with holistic Islam, is extremely, extremely important. And not just important from a practical level. Rather, it's important from what? A spiritual perspective, just the same. Having practical Islam is just as spiritual as mysticism. Rather, it is mysticism. I hate the word mysticism, but a lot of people think spirituality is mysticism. And I'll tell you, let me tell you straightforward. When you want to talk mysticism, you want to talk spirituality, don't go to other than the ulama themselves that practiced it. Sheikh Bahjat himself, he was asked, how do I get to the highest levels of mysticism? He said two things. Number one, Mafatih al-Jinan, Ibadat. Number two, the book of your marja', the book of your scholar. Have a practical outlook towards Islam. Know the practical side towards Islam. Know Your fundamentals first and foremost. Know why you practice how you practice and what you practice. Why do you worship? As we begin, why do you worship? Like, you know he exists, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do you worship? No, understand. Why should I search for the truth? Understand first. And that's why the riwayah says, look what the riwayah says. One of the meanings that you can take from the riwayah, Wallahu alim. عن أبي عبد الله الصادق. Look what he says. لا يقبل الله عملا إلا بمعرفة. God will not accept an action except if there's understanding. معرفة. Knowledge. ولا يقبل المعرفة إلا بعمل. And understanding is not going to be accepted. Wallahu alim, has no fruit except if there's action accompanied with it. In another riwayah, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam links between al-ibadah and ma'rifah. Having understanding. Like, that's practical Islam. Practical Islam. You tell me, Ahmed, sure, what you're saying is correct and what you're saying, it makes sense. But you find in the scriptures themselves, the Quran, not everything the Quran talks about is always practical. On the contrary, many things in the Quran are purely theoretical. Purely theoretical. What happened, for example, with Ad? What happened with Thamud? Right? It's history. What's the practicality in that? Or some of the ahkam that are presented in the Quran. The ahkam al-wiratha, for example, the rulings of inheritance. Like, where's the practicality in that? I'm reading this every single day, or I'm reading this in Shahr Ramadan. I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, alhamdulillah, I'm reading Quran, great, it's a blessing, but how's this gonna help me? Where is the practicality in that? To this, there's two answers, my brothers and sisters. Number one, the scriptures of your religion, the scriptures themselves, is the religion. So learning the scriptures is essentially learning the religion in total. Hanging on to the scriptures, my brothers and sisters, is hanging on to the religion itself. Just like hanging on to your traditions, my brothers and sisters, gives you identity. Although there's aspects of your traditions you're not going to apply. But because the Quran is your identity, it's your passport as a Muslim. Understanding every aspect of it gives you your identity as a Muslim, even if you're not going to be practicing some of its aspects or some of its verses or chapters. Jameel. That's number one. Number two, the Quran itself calls itself what we call maw'izah. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, هَذَا بَيَانٌ لِلنَّاسِ وَهُدًى وَمَوْعِظَةٌ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That the Quran is not just something that shows to the people what they did not know. It's not just a book that clarifies. Rather, it is what we call a maw'izah, a lesson for them to learn. Yes, it's speaking about historical events, but behind that historical event is a lesson that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to convey. Not merely a historical event that occurred. There's a lesson behind it. And that's why you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions many stories in the Quran and He calls them qasas, stories. It's not history. It's not, wallah, this is just something that happened in history. I want you guys to know about it because it just happened. No, there's a reason behind it. There's a reason behind it. There's a lesson behind it. The book of the Quran itself, and this is another shahid, another sign, another proof, or another example. The Quran is Quran Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's the Quran, they say Quran Muhammad, Allah's Quran of Allah. But it's the Quran of Rasulullah. Yani it's the book that Rasulullah came and gave to the people. But Rasulullah is mentioned 5 times by name in the Quran. And if you want to know of the story that was mentioned most in the Quran, it's the story of Nabi Musa. It's not even the story, it's not even the events that were happening with the Arabs. Why? Because the story of Nabi Musa alayhi salamullah is what? Has lessons and is a lesson. And from so many different perspectives. You can learn about loyalty from Nabi Musa alayhi salam. You can learn about perseverance from Nabi Musa alayhi salam. You can learn about tawakkul ala Allah, trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the events that occurred with Nabi Musa alayhi salamullah. Although the Quran is for the Muslimin, the Quran is from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. If it was merely propaganda for the Prophet should have been mentioned more than Nabi Musa. But no, Nabi Musa alayhi salam was mentioned because of the stories and the lessons that happened with Nabi Musa alayhi salam. Practical Islam. Tayyib. Holistic Islam, understanding Islam from a holistic perspective. Here, Sayyid Munir al-Khabbaz, he writes a beautiful article on this. Anybody that can that can read Arabic, I highly, highly suggest you go to Sayyid Munir al-Khabbaz's website and you search up, I believe it's under the title, At-Tafaqquh fil Ilm, so learning knowledge or delving into knowledge. He has a beautiful, beautiful article on this, where he comes in, he says, when it comes to Islam, there are two outlooks that you can have. There's, as we said, the holistic outlook, and then there's the fragmented outlook. And he calls them an-nadhra at-tajzi'iyyah and an-nadhra at-takabiyah. An-nadhra at-tajzi'iyyah, which is the fragmented outlook, he said is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. Why? He gives some examples. He says most of the misconceptions of the West today, or most of the reasons why the West looks down at Muslims and Islam, is because of this outlook that Muslims have and the West has towards Islam. They look at Islam from one perspective, through one piece, and don't look at Islam as a whole. He gives an example. He says, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِلذَّكَرْ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ, that the male in inheritance, male takes 2 times more than the woman, than the female. The man takes 2 times more than the female. Jameel. So let's say we were left with $3,000. We were left with $3,000, and there was only a male. There was only a daughter and a son. No one else. From the entire tribe, nobody was there. Like, who takes the inheritance? Well, we say the son takes 2,000, 2/3, and the daughter takes 1/3. So the man takes 2 times more than the woman. If you had a fragmented look upon Islam, and many of you are looking at me like, wow, really? Yes. This wow really is coming from a fragmented outlook. An-nadhra tajzi'iyyah. If you just wanted to look at Islam from one perspective, if you wanted to look at Islam from one narrow scope, you'd say that is inequality. That's inequality. That the man takes 2 times more than the woman. Why? Does the woman have less economical value? Why is the woman not financially in our day and age more stable than what she was before and independent? How does that fit with today's demographic, where there's probably just as much women in the workforce as there are men, or it's coming up? The number is on the rise. Where in our economy today, if all the women stayed home, our economy would collapse. How is that ayah, how is that verse in any way, shape, or form compatible with what we have today? For someone that has a nadhra tajzi'iyyah, a fragmented outlook upon Islam, they'll fall on this and be like, I can't answer. But if you have a holistic Islam, holistic scope, holistic outlook, you'll answer back and say, yes. But look at the other aspect of Islam that put the obligation on the man to provide for his family. That me as a man, if I'm married, I have to provide for my wife, even if she's rich and I'm poor. I have to provide for her. And I just have to provide for her just by giving her the minimal. I have to provide for her what's considered normal in her circumstance. That is an obligation on my shoulders, just like Salat and Sawm and Hajj. I have to provide. So because Islam, this is one way to look at it. Because Islam made it obligatory on the man to provide for another human being or set of human beings, the family, Islam gave the man more money when it came time to split up the inheritance. Because the woman is going to keep the money. She's going to pocket that money. That man is going to go back home and put that money down for a down payment. That man is going to put that money for groceries. That man, it's wajib upon him to do it. It's obligatory upon him to do it. That man is going to go pay the rent with that money. Not to say the woman is not going to. But in terms of obligation, what's obligatory? The woman can have all the money in the world she has to spend on the house. But the man in Islam, there's an obligation on his shoulders to spend on the house, to spend on his wife, spend on his family. For this reason, wallahu alam, this could be a wisdom, wallahu alam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the male takes 2 times more than the woman, not because we look down on women, not because we think that the woman is less valuable economically, financially than the man. No, because Islam gave him economical obligations while didn't give the female economical obligations. The danger of fragmented Islam is what is bringing us down in the West. It's because we don't have a holistic understanding of Islam. And how are we going to expect the West to look at Islam in a holistic way? That's one. Another danger of not having holistic Islam, not having a holistic outlook, is the ruh of Islam, the spirit of Islam becomes distorted. The meaning of Islam becomes distorted. What we consider the meaning of Islam, behind Islam, the meaning of the tashri'ah, the meaning of the rule itself becomes distorted. Because we didn't understand the whole picture. We don't have a clear picture. And a clear example of this, my brothers and sisters, is what I heard one of these speakers that were out there speaking about. He was answering a question as to why he believes that there should be one Eid for the entire world, and all of the Shias have to be under one Eid, and why having 3 days of Eid, celebrating Eid for 3 days on end, is something wrong. The answer he gave, he said, when it comes to the riwayat are clear. There is what we call hujjiyat al-dhuhur. There is what we call al-dhuhur, which is what they say hujjah. In other words, it's clear that you need to see the moon with your own eyes. It's clear. It's clear. The riwayat, I can go right now to a site of Shia and bring to you 28 riwayat. When I did a lecture on moon sighting, there was 28 riwayat that say, like literally, like explicitly, you need to see the moon with your eyes. Like, I'm not going to get into that. But he said the riwayat are clear on this. But the problem with taking the riwayat in the literal sense, not even in the literal sense, taking what is apparent from the meaning, considering the meaning, the apparent meaning to be a proof, the problem with that is it goes against the spirit of Islam. Why does it go against the spirit of Islam? He said, because Islam wants us all to be united on Eid. And it goes against the overall meaning of having Eid. On what premise was this based? As in, for a thousand years, our people have been celebrating Eid for 3 days on end and nobody complained. And nobody complained that it is going against the spirit of Islam. Sure, if we're all having Eid on one day, fine. But even according to many of the scholars, even the scholars that believe in wahdat al-ufuq, even the scholars believe in wahdat al-ufuq, not even wahdat al-ufuq. Sheikh Bashir al-Najfi comes and says if it's seen anywhere in the world, then the entire world has Eid. Like even with that, there are circumstances where Eid would for one part of the world is going to be maybe different for another as compared to another part of the world. Where one part of the world can miss Eid because they're in different time zones. I don't want to get into the mathematics of it all. But regardless of that, even when it comes to the most liberal, as we say, the most liberal or easiest of rulings for moon sighting, there are still situations where you may have Eid and you don't know, while somebody is having Eid somewhere else. Where does it go against the spirit? Why is it today that we are complaining that this goes against the spirit of Islam? Is it the spirit of Islam that's being distorted, or is it your understanding of what the spirit of Islam that's being distorted? As in, is the problem with the riwayat? Because he doesn't want to take the riwayat. He's saying the riwayat and their apparent meaning, we can't take it because it goes against the spirit of Islam. Like, is it the riwayat that are the problem? Is it your understanding of the spirit of Islam that's the problem? Your understanding of what Islam is calling for. That's the problem. That's the problem. That's the issue. Having 3 days of Eid does not go against the spirit of Islam. It doesn't go. It's never been going against the spirit of Islam. Just today, just in the last 100 or so years, is when the people started to make this whole thing an issue. Before it was so easy, it's normal. No, my brothers and sisters. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Having a holistic understanding of Islam, my brothers and sisters, takes us away and protects us from falling in such holes, falling in such traps. On the outside, it sounds great. On the outside, these different ways of thinking sound great, but when you delve into them, you find at the core, there's just a clear misunderstanding of what Islam as a whole is calling for. What Islam as a whole is calling for. Sallallahu ala Muhammad. So, my brothers and sisters, the practical point of this entire lecture, what is it? Ask yourselves, what is it that I'm trying to gain in this month? When I want to learn something, it's not just learning. No, what am I going to be learning about? Is what I'm going to be learning about practical or not? Is it going to feed that holistic Islam approach? Or is it just going to talk about some topic that is secondary, tertiary even? What is it that I'm exposing myself to? And am I truly going to be benefiting from this month in terms of the knowledge that I'm seeking? In terms of the knowledge that I'm seeking, my brothers and sisters. And you find that in Shahr Ramadan, I'm going to end with this last point. In Shahr Ramadan in particular, seeking knowledge is one of the best things that you can possibly do. Seeking knowledge is one of the best things that you can possibly do. And it's one of the best forms of ibadah, my brothers and sisters. That's why if you go to Mafatih al-Jinan, and keep this in mind for Laylatul Qadr, keep this in mind for Laylatul Qadr, go to Mafatih al-Jinan, you look at A'mal Laylatul Qadr, the actions or the ibadat, the worships that are good to do in Laylatul Qadr. Jimmy, what are they? You have X, Y, Z, and you have Talab al-Ilm, learning. You have the night that is worth your entire lifetime. 1,000 months, that Laylatul Qadr is better than 1,000 months. 1,000 months, translate 1,000 months to years, it's about 80 years. It's your whole lifetime. Yani Laylatul Qadr, this one night, equates your entire lifetime. What should I do in this month, in this one night? For these next 8 or so hours, what should I be doing? What is one of the best things that I can be doing? Talab al-Ilm, pick up a book. Read a riwayah. Listen to a lecture. Expose yourself to knowledge. What's the knowledge that I expose myself to? Go back to the beginning. What did we say? Ayah muhkamah. A verse that is clear and understood. The meaning of that verse. Aw fariida adilah. An obligation that's on your shoulders that you must fulfill. Learn your rules. Aw sunnah qa'im. A tradition. A hadith. As to how to live. Something practical. Something that will elevate you spiritually on a practical level. Something practical that will elevate you spiritually, my brothers and sisters, and elevate a poor soul like myself. So you find there's that connection. There's a connection that does not break. So I ask you, my brothers and sisters, and I ask all of them, and I'm nobody to advise, I'm a nobody, I'm nothing, but I advise all of my brothers and sisters, all of them, from the mu'mineen, from the mu'minat, to keep this in mind. When you are searching for the lectures to listen to online, alhamdulillah, there's a lot of lectures. When you're searching for the lectures to listen to online, when you are trying to learn something new, find something practical. And inshallah ta'ala, I don't want to be preaching something I don't practice. So for the next 7 days, because we already have, today's the first day, for the next 7 days after this, we're going to look at the fundamentals. We're going to go back to the fundamentals. We are going to delve into what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked us to delve into. Ayah muhkama, a verse. Aw fariida adila, an obligation, or a sunnah, a practical way of life, something that we can practice. These are the different topics that we are going to be discussing. And even the philosophical ones, even the theoretical ones are going to have practicality to them, inshallah ta'ala. Before I end off for today, I want you to give me your attention for just 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. Alhamdulillah, there's a lot of rich content on the internet today. There's a lot of lectures being done. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. But just the same way, and I advise this to all of my brothers and sisters, and I'm nobody to advise. Rather, this is the advice of the ulama. I'm merely a messenger for the ulama, and inshallah, if Ahlul Bayt accept me as this, a messenger for Ahlul Bayt. The same way that I don't walk into the class of a professor that's not qualified to be teaching that subject, don't expose yourselves, my brothers and sisters, and your family to individuals on the internet or even on the pulpits. I'm being very frank here. To those that are not qualified. No, take from the ulama, take from the scholars. Sure, they may be a speaker. Sure, they may have many, people that are listening to them, etc. They're known. Are they qualified? Are they qualified? Are they qualified? Just ask that question. Have they studied Islam from the Hawza? If yes, listen to them. If no, then be wary, my brothers and sisters. Find someone who's qualified. Find someone who's qualified. Yes, the same way that I ask, is the doctor that's prescribing me the medicine qualified? Ask, is this person who's on the pulpit of Rasulullah qualified? Should they be lecturing or should they not be lecturing? That is a question, my brothers and sisters, that we should ask ourselves. And I ask you, if they haven't studied Hawza, God bless them. But go to someone who studied Hausa. Go to someone who studied Hausa, my brothers and sisters. Go to someone who has looked deeply into the riwayat and has teachers over his or her head to guide them and tell them, listen, this is the wrong way to go about it. This is the right way to say it. And you don't know how many times my teachers have come and told me, listen, it's a good topic, but say it in this way. This is the better way. I didn't understand it in the beginning, but later on, alhamdulillah, with experience, I looked back and I said, okay, if I said it in that way, it would have backfired on me. And it would have been misunderstood. Go to those that have Hausa backing and Hausa experience and Hausa training. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل